All right. Good evening. Good evening. This is Dr. King. Welcome to my first 2021 presentation. I don't know what I was getting ready to say, but welcome everybody. Hey, Sheila, make sure you type in the chat box for me your name, please, ma'am. This is my first presentation for 2021. We are talking about doing a personal and professional SWOT analysis or analyses, however you want to put it. And without further ado, let's get started. Hold on, let me get my timer going. Once again, I try to be cognizant of everyone's time. Oh, and we are doing a poll everywhere tonight, ladies. So here's the link. So when you get a chance, click on the link and answer the poll everywhere question for me. Let me get my share screen going. All right, and here we go. Now, y'all know I have to move boxes around. So personal and professional SWOT analyses. If I am buffering, I'm sorry. I think I just saw the thing come up. My apologies. Oh, okay, I was trying to make sure nobody had asked me a question. Y'all all know me, but got to tell everybody anyway. Who is Dr. King? Who is Dr. King? I'm a wife and a mother. I'm a 34-year resident of Duncanville, Texas, and I've lived in the 800 Link community for 18 years. How did I become Dr. King? I received my high school diploma from Duncanville High School, received an associate's degree from El Centro College, earned my bachelor's degree at UT Permian Basin, my master's at the University of Phoenix, and my doctorate at North Central University. And what have you done with your life, Dr. King? I actually changed some of this stuff around too, because I kept saying the same thing every week and I know it got boring. But I will always have 25 plus years working in corporate America in various industries and for various companies, 12 years working in higher ed, 12 years coaching the Lady Panthers Girls Basketball Association. And then we are partnered with USA Basketball, Junior NBA, FIBA, and AAU to host events and tournaments for girls basketball players. I guess it did sound the same, huh? And then what TI Communities Pillars does the presentation focus on this week? Education and community building, as always. And who is this presentation for? This presentation is for anyone seeking to understand their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, both in their personal life and in the capacity of building, being a business. And so here's tonight's poll everywhere question. Have you conducted a SWOT analysis ever? Has anybody ever done a SWOT analysis? I see 100% no so far. Is that everybody? SWOT analyses actually are not hard to do. I've done a few. They kind of go hand in hand with doing, a goal list, things like that. Doing a SWOT analysis is just one more thing to help you, find purpose, and once you have purpose going, to stay on track and find new things to do, new goals, and all of it matches with purpose. Every now and then your purpose may change. Who knows? Who knows? What does the acronym SWOT mean or stand for? S is for strengths, W is weaknesses, O is opportunities, and T are threats. And what is a SWOT analysis? A SWOT analysis at the end of the day is really just a chart. It's a 4-section chart, looks just like this. I did it all in little pretty colors, but at the end of the day, it's like a graph, and the top two are going to always have strengths and weaknesses are going to be at the top. Those are your internal factors, things that go on within yourself, or if you have a company, things that are going on inside of your company. And then the bottom two are going to be your opportunities and threats. And those are your external factors. Those are things outside of you and outside of your company that factor into things. And so personally, a SWOT analysis is a way to help one understand their life, set goals, and determine their life's purpose. And professionally, it is a method for businesses to understand both internal and external factors that will make a business successful or ultimately lead to failure and closure. SWOT analyses actually were started, as a business tool. But as with everything, people learn to adapt things, and it's been adapted to apply to life as well, to a person's life. But most often when people talking about doing a SWOT analysis, they're really talking about doing one for a company. That's what, that's where you'll first learn, if you work for any company or, R&D, those type of areas, SWOT analysis is something that you'll hear a lot about, because companies use them, because they're trying to figure out what they need to fix, what they need to maximize on, things of that nature. And so I've split it up to where we're going to talk about each individual thing on its own slide. And the first one are strengths, and the left side is always going to be the personal side, and then the right side will be the professional side for each slide. And so on the personal side, the strengths are an internal audit of yourself to determine what you currently are in control of. These are things that you have control of. And so questions you can ask yourself, like I said, this is a chart. It is an analysis. You're trying to audit. It's basically you're auditing yourself, or you're auditing your business, not financially, but in other ways, anything. And I mean, the financials do come into it, but we're not talking about doing a financial audit. We're talking about doing an audit of your entire company, or doing an audit of your entire being. These are things that you are in control of. So questions, when you're doing a SWOT analysis, there are questions and things that you want to think about. And so some of these, and this is not, these lists can, once again, nothing's exhaustive. You can ask, it's infinite. As much as you ask yourself, or as much as you ask about your company, gives you more information to work with. This is just a bit of information that you can use. So for the personal side, what advantages do you have that others don't? What skills do you possess? What networks do you possess? Are you part of? What educational attainment do you have? Sometimes it's about where you live, where you work, things of that nature. So what advantages do you have that others don't? Second, a question can be, what do you do better than others? Everybody does something better than someone else. And that's just a fact. So that kind of determines and helps you figure out what your purpose is. So sit down and figure out, what do you do better than others? Third, what values do you believe in that others don't? And, morals and values come, those are major things, when you start talking about yourself and running a business, because you got to have a baseline foundation of what you will and will not do, and what you will and will not accept, the whole ethical, ethics, morality, all that type of thing. So, when you sit back and look at yourself and look at other people around you, what values do you possess that others don't? And then what resources do you have access to? Resources are everything: money, networking, software, hardware. It is whatever it is that you're trying to do for yourself. What resources do you currently have access to help you? And then let's move over to the professional side. And this is an internal audit of the business to determine things that it does best. And so when you're talking about doing your strengths for your company, think about the things that the company does better than any other company in that industry. So like if you're a baker, what do you do as a baker better than any other baker that you know? If you, basketball coach, what do you do as a coach that you think is, that you do better than other coaches around you? Build cars. It doesn't matter what you do, but currently, what do you do that's better than your competition? Period. Then what makes the company tick? What is it about your company that you think makes it better than others? Every talk about basketball, basketball helps with my examples. I'm a coach. Years ago, y'all always hear me talk about this when we talk about basketball. There used to be so many basketball teams just in this area that we live in. And I mean, there were 30, 40 girl teams and way more boy teams. But now you may only have, I think now, to be honest, there are probably 10 girl teams before men and 5, because teams started folding. They started consolidating into bigger programs, because the reason being, that's when the whole shoe brand leagues came along. So everybody either wanted to be part of the Nike EYBL league, or they wanted to be part of the Adidas Gauntlet, or I forgot what Under Armour called their league. But everybody wanted to be part of those leagues because they wanted to, quote unquote, pay. When it comes to recruiting and all those type of things, coaches only go to certain tournaments. And You know, unfortunately, Nike EYBL did have the biggest tournaments because they had the most money to, to fund those tournaments. So everybody wanted to become part of an EYBL program. And in Dallas, and it's really interesting because normally across the country, one state only has one EYBL team. Well, in the state of Texas, we actually have 4 in the state, and 2 of them reside here in the DFW Metroplex. So everybody wanted to be an EYBL program, so they started folding into the EYBL leagues here, programs here. There's 2 of them, and that kind of killed teams. My program is an independent team, and so when you say what makes your company tick, for them, they may say it makes them tick because they're an EYBL team. Well, for me, I think what makes my program tick is because we're not. We're an independent program. We're not trying to be part of anything. And it's helped us. There are things that we've been able to do because we're not part of those leagues. Because once you become part of those leagues, you can compete in tournaments and programs and games and things that league hosts. Well, because we're not part of that, we can do what we want to do. So that's what I believe what makes my company tick over others. And then what values drive your business? Are you trying just to go for profit? What is it about your business that you value most? Because that is itself is what's going to determine and really be a defining part as to whether or not your company ever lasts. It doesn't matter what industry you go in, the value that you have and the values that are the foundation of your business are really going to determine how long that business lasts. And then your current resources, how are you maximizing them? Are you efficient? Are you making sure that your books are balanced? Are you making sure your bills are paid on time? How are you maximizing your resources? Are you, making sure you have good talent? It doesn't necessarily have to always be the best, but you want to make sure that people work for you are good and solid, educated, have the background and the skills necessary to do the job. So how are your resources maximized? Anything that gives the company an advantage over the competition is a strength. It could be anything, so those are things that when you sit down and do this chart, you start brainstorming and you write, and if, a lot of companies, they'll get like the top people in the company will get together and do this. So brainstorm, have a focus group, write down the strengths and let everybody have input because somebody else may think of something that you don't. So you start doing this from a company-wide thing. Even if you're just the only one that runs the company, like the company is just yours, you're a baker and it's just you. Well, get input from your clients, your customers to figure out what you do best. Customer reviews, people only see them sometimes as being bad things. And a lot of times they are because normally a review is only given when somebody is complaining about something. But sometimes reviews are also wonderful when people are praising your product or your service, and so read those. So, sometimes it may hurt. Sometimes it's, hey, I did a good job. So you go through your customer reviews, send them out to your customers, get your reviews and read them. And that helps you figure out where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And we'll get to the weaknesses in just a little bit. So personally, you're figuring out, what you currently are in control of for yourself, business wise, figuring out where what your business does best currently. Everything is currently, some just like anything, a SWOT analysis may be done every quarter, or every, half of every year or every year, so in that time frame, you're only looking at that current time frame from when it started to when it ended doing the SWOT analysis. Everything is always current right then because you're trying to project forward things that you're trying to do. And so then weaknesses, strengths on one extreme, and then on the other extreme, you have your weaknesses. So on the left, we have the personal side weaknesses. This is an internal audit of yourself to determine things that you need to work on. Your strengths, you figured out what you do best. Now your weaknesses, you're figuring out what you need to work on as a person. So what are your weaknesses? That's the first thing you got to ask yourself. What are your weaknesses? We all have them. We just have to admit that we have them. Where are you lacking? There are things that may be going on. You may not have the necessary educational attainment that you need. You may have some anger management skills you need to work on, just be honest with yourself and just where are you lacking? What are things that you need to work on? What are your negative bad habits? Negative bad habits. I said it. What are your negative habits? What are things? And we all have them and we're not perfect, but list them, now let's hope that you don't have a whole bunch of them. But, we all have good and bad habits that, that we need to own up to. Then what do you need to improve on? Maybe you need to I always talk about education. Maybe you need to get a certification. You just may need to take a professional development class and improve on your skill set, for maybe, Windows, or Microsoft Office, or something like that. Maybe you play an instrument and you need to get, some personal training to get better because, you might want to make the, next higher band. It could be anything. What do you need to improve on? And then more importantly, you need to figure out what it is you fear, because we all have them, and fear can become a weakness, and it can immobilize you and cause you to become stagnant if you don't acknowledge the fact that it's there and try to work on it. We will always have them, but like what I remember in college, fear was an anagram for false evidence appearing real. Anything that you allow to stop you in your tracks from moving forward, that's a fear. So figure out what that is so you can turn it into a strength. And then on the professional side, it's weakness is an internal audit of the business to determine things that the business needs to improve on. Now we're talking about your company. So what are the weaknesses in personnel? I mean, these are all questions you can ask. Like I said, these are all just sample questions that you can ask yourself. What are the weaknesses in the personnel that you have? What are the weaknesses in the resources that you have? Where are you lacking in resources? What do your personnel need to improve on? And these are things that if you're actually doing a really good analysis of your company over time, you will start to see the patterns of these things. It's not going to, the first time you do it, it may be a surprise. But once after the first or second time, and you start doing these, in a timely manner, even personally, when you start doing a SWOT analysis, in timely manner and over time, you'll start noticing patterns and things. And so it gets the first time you do it, first, second time, it's a little hard, because you're having to think, you're going to fry your brain trying to figure out some of this stuff. But once you get that stuff down on paper, you can then, make your projections, come back 3-6 months later and do it again. And then you compare the first one to the second one and you'll start to see things. So that's where you'll start to really figure out where your weaknesses are. Once you after your first one, and then get into a second or third analysis. And then what are the weaknesses in procedures, protocols, policies, and rules? And this comes from, are you up to date in your industry? Are you matching industry-wide standards? Every industry has something that they change, every 6 months to a year, some even sooner. So you have to make sure that your business, your company is up, is up to date and modernized with everything going on in the industry. So you have to figure out where your weaknesses are in procedures that you do, depending on what you do. Any protocols, any policies, any rules, any guidelines, any, whatever, certifications that may or may not be needed, things of that nature. And then what are the weaknesses in the systems used? What type of hardware are you using? What type of software are you using? What type of programs? Depending on what you do, is your order program efficient? Is it getting you what you need? It's just all type of stuff. What type of financial software are you using? All these type of systems and everything. Like I said, you can run the gamut on just pages and pages of questions you can ask. It's just sitting down and thinking about it and frying your brain, but it'll be a good brain fry. And then opportunities, the bottom two, remember the bottom two are opportunities and threats. And so opportunities on the personal side, these are external. Remember, strengths and weaknesses are internal factors. Opportunities and threats are external factors. So the external audit of chances for something good to happen personally. These are your personal. So what resources do you have access to that you can use immediately? What educational attainment level do you need to rise to? Do you have an opportunity? Did somebody give you a scholarship or is willing to pay for you to take some classes? Did you, look up on some money, and can take a professional development class or something like that? What networking systems do you have and are part of? Can you call somebody, like they say, a lot of doing business is networking with people, who can you call, and talk to, when you have questions or need to bounce ideas off of somebody? What are those around you failing to do? What are people around you not doing? People rise, we may rise, but we don't all rise at the same time and in the same speed. So, what are those around you failing to do that you can take advantage of? What innovations can help you? What's coming out new, or what can you create? Maybe you're an engineer or a mechanical engineer or, a medical engineer. What is it that you can create that you see a lack of that you can create and create a new innovation for the world to take advantage of? Are there any positions that you can apply for? Sometimes you have to take a lateral move to move forward, not necessarily move backwards. Let's never try to move backwards. But a lot of times when you're working, you may want to, promote into a higher position, but it may require you to take a lateral position because the position you're currently in does not hire into that position. So you have to take a lateral position that maybe does hire in that position. And sometimes you may have to take a step back because depending on what you're trying to do, you have to go backwards to go forwards. Hopefully that's the last resort. But, it's just, what opportunities can you take advantage of? What is out there? And when I say take advantage of, that means positively, not who can you manipulate, not who can you use. That's not opportunities we're talking about. We're talking true positive opportunities of what's out there that you can maximize and use to your benefit. And then on the right side, let's go to the external audit of opportunities for your company. So it's an external audit of chances for what resources are available and needs to be utilized for business. Industry trends can be taken advantage of. What's going on in the industry that you work in that you see, that there's somebody's either doing and not doing to the best that it can be done at, or nobody's doing it at all, and somebody should be doing it. And you can, that's a little niche. Remember the whole niche thing? That's the little niche you can take advantage of. What marketing trends can be taken advantage of? Same thing, marketing is either print or online, use social media, radio, flyers, billboards, text messages. There are so many ways to market things now. So what marketing trends can be taken advantage of? What innovations in the industry will aid you in customer and client growth? Because when you own your business, though your one of your goals is to make a profit because you want to stay open, you also have to build your customer client growth base, customer base to keep that going. You won't repeat customers, but at the end of the day, you also have to bring in new ones. So what can you do and what innovations are going on in the industry that you're in that you increase the number of people coming to you for the first time? Keeping them there is the hard part. Or some people say, trying to get a first customer is hard. It actually is. But once you get them there, you got to keep them there. And that's actually harder. So, there are two different, things you have to work with there. How do you get them there? And then how do you keep them once you have them? And then what resources can you tap into? And resources, depending on the industry you work in and what you're doing, can be anything, but you have to always have a pulse on the resources that are available to you in your industry. Like I said, they can be financial. If you have a product, what can you add to your product to make it better? Or can you partner with somebody in another industry, what they call co-branding? Can you do things like that to help make your, whatever you offer, whatever service or product that you offer, what can you do and what resources can you tap into to make it better? And then threats, that's what they are, threats. So on the personal side, a threat is an external audit to determine what issues can cause a catastrophic issue to arise in your life due to your miscues. That means you were not paying attention enough to not see this blind side coming. Now, sometimes there are things that we can do and we can do everything right and we will still get blindsided. I know for a fact it's happened a couple times to me, more than a couple, but I'm just saying whatever. But there's also sometimes you can see something coming, but you didn't pay attention hard enough, or you can, you just didn't take it seriously. We can all, prime example, yesterday's issue at the Capitol building. People are trying to act like they didn't know that was coming. Ray Charles saw that coming. But there are things that you have to pay attention to in your life. It's there, don't make excuses for it. Don't say, it'll get better, don't do any of that, just, did y'all get disconnected? Because I see Sister Thompson left too. What happened? Did y'all get disconnected?
No, I left. My volume had gone real low, so I went out and came back.
Oh, okay. I just saw people starting requesting to come back in. I was like, did something disconnect? Okay, good. Did y'all hear anything on the threats?
Yes, you're good. Keep going.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. I just saw people coming back. I'm like, uh-oh, did I lose some folks? Okay, so that's what I'm saying with threats. I just started on threats. So in your personal life, threats are things that, for the most part, they're not blindsides. You know, you can't necessarily, you can do everything you can, and sometimes you will still continue to get blindsided. It just happens. Threats are things that you see them at your peripheral, you know, in either visually, or you can think about them in your mind. You see them, you know it can happen, but you didn't pay enough attention to it, and now it did. Or you simply ignored it, and now it's a problem. That's what a threat is personal. So you can ask yourself, well, what obstacles do you currently face in life or at work? You know, and it can be anything. And then what are you competing with? Who are you competing with? What or who? It can be either one. You know, and unfortunately on the job, we are always competing with somebody. Now in life, we always say, you know, your competition is the person in the mirror, and that is true as well. But on the job, you know, there's always somebody that we're competing with that does our same job or is trying to get the same job we're trying to promote into. So who are you competing with? And then that's when you start all over. Figure out who you're competing with. What are their strengths? What are your strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are your weaknesses? What are their opportunities? What are your opportunities? SWOT analysis can get as deep as you want it to get. And then, are there any weaknesses that can result into becoming a threat? Weaknesses not handled professionally are threats. And you want your weaknesses to become strengths. But if you don't take those weaknesses and pay enough attention to them, admit that they are there, and try to address them and get a hold of them and make them into strengths, they will become threats, because they're going to lead to something tragic happening. Not, you know, not some major catastrophe, but at the end of the day, it's going to lead in you taking a step back, having to work your way back forward in some, you know, in some way. So keep a hold of what your threats are and what your weaknesses are. And then, is there anything threatening your livelihood? You know, that's the one thing that tends to put people on notice when things happen, because it starts to affect their livelihood. You know, and as with everybody, the first thing that tends to come to mind are finances. You know, our finances, we are all at some point broke. But you know, there's a different type of broke when you broke and you can't pay bills. You know, if your bills are paid and you broke, that's good, because your bills are paid. You might be broke from paying bills, but guess what? Your bills are paid. But when you broke and can't pay bills, and broke and can't buy food, that's a whole different, that's a threat. See what I'm saying? So it's things like that, you know. So what, anything that threatens your livelihood, those tend to be the things that we think about first when we start talking about threats and weaknesses. So, but I mean, like I said, you can ask yourself all types of questions and figure out everything that you need to figure out. And then from a business standpoint, a threat is an external audit to determine what issues can result in a loss of profit and a loss of clients to customers, and ultimately in the business closing. These things are that if you let it, it'll start a domino effect and you will end up closing. You know, these are questions of what systems can affect your ability to deliver a quality product or service. You know, what personal issues do you have? Personnel issues do you have? What is the competition doing that can cause a potential loss of your clients and customers? You know, your customers are jumping ship going to the competition. You know, are you failing to innovate? You know, you can do, I was looking at something the other day, and I like to watch a lot of food shows. And one thing that the Asian culture does that we don't do over here in Western culture, when they sell food, especially like fast food and things like that, they cook one thing. They don't have a Jack in the Box with 1,000 things on the menu. They may cook one thing, and they have been cooking that one thing for 80 years. And that's just that, you know. So even though you're cooking that one thing, there was one show I was watching where this lady, her mother made this type of candy. And it was rice, like sweet rice, sticky rice with caramel or something in it. It looked really interesting. It looked like it looked really sweet, like something you would have to drink with coffee or something like that, eat with coffee. But what ended up happening was, she had to come back home. Long story short, she had come to the United States, go to college, had to go back home. Her parents were dying. And she took over the family business. And all her family made was this one dessert candy thing. And she was trying to make it the way her mom had always made it, but it was a long, intensive preparation process to make. And so when she got married, her and her husband sat down and thought about it. And they were like, you know, we can do this, but we need to innovate, and we need to make this process more efficient and quicker so we could sell more. Like her mom may only sell, say, maybe 10 in a day. She was wanting to sell more than that. And that's fine. You know, she wanted to take her mom's recipe and make it bigger. That was fine. Mother didn't like it so much, but but that's what she ended up doing. And so her and her husband ended up buying these machines, like one machine grinding up the coconut, because it was a coconut dessert type thing. One machine ground up the coconut, one machine cooked the rice, one machine made the caramel, one machine did this. And so they were able to do all the things that her mother was doing by hand. They were now using machines to do. And then she would make it by hand. It was able for her to go quicker. And then they were able, her and her husband were able to open up 3 locations. Her mother had 1 location for 80 years. Within the first 5 years, her and her husband had opened up 3 different shops. The innovation didn't change the dessert. It just gave them a quicker way of making it. Some people say, when people try to, maximize and they start to use these, distribution companies to make their products, that it kind of loses that taste. Well, she just made sure that the preparation, she had machinery to help her with the preparation, but once she started to actually prepare it and get it ready for selling, she was doing that part by hand, and she taught her employees how to do it. And so she made sure she innovated, because if she didn't, and it was basically a threat to their livelihood, which made them innovate. That's kind of what happened. They weren't making enough money. And so they had to figure out, do we want to close the family business or do we want to make it better? And that's what her husband did. They figured out something that was a threat and they changed it to an opportunity, and they innovated, and now their business is flourishing. That's the best example I can give you. And so you have to be able to, don't fail to innovate. I don't care what you do. You just keep a pulse on what's going on in your industry and use that. Some things you may use, some things you may not. But always know what's going on in the industry that you work in, so you're not behind and you're not failing to use the services and the things that are coming out that could help you be better. And then, are there any resource issues? And a lot of times resources with businesses come by way of funding. Are you losing money? Are you not making any profits? What are you doing? Or is there a product or a service that's not selling? Has it phased itself out? Is it no longer relevant? You have to sit down and look at what you offer, what you do. And though, you may want to, have a basketball team, do training, do personal training, do this and do that. Sometimes you're going to stretch yourself too thin, and where you may have 4 or 5 avenues in basketball that you may have money coming in, you may not be making enough money than if you consolidate or just knock out a couple of things and do good with, instead of having 5 services or products, why not just have 2 or 3? You have to have one. One is wonderful. You have to have at least one. But, sometimes you can be a coach and be a trainer, and that's fine. But trying to be a coach and be a trainer and sell product and do this and do this, you're stretching yourself too thin. And at the end of the day, it may not result in any additional money coming in like you thought it would. So are there any resource issues, personnel issues? Do you have too many coaches? Do you not have enough coaches? There are just all type of things depending on what industry you're in. There are many, just so many questions that you can ask yourself, that these are threats. And sometimes you have to streamline. Everything is about streamlining, making stuff more efficient. So, you have to sit down and ask yourself these questions. Are there some things that I may have to get rid of? Are there some people that I may have to get rid of? And you don't take these questions lightly, and you don't make decisions lightly, especially when it comes to personnel and employees, because when you start getting rid of employees, you're messing with people's livelihood. So you got to be really careful and be honest with yourself about things like that. And so why use a SWOT analysis? And I put this here. I could have put it before I discussed what it was, but it was better if you figured out what it was first, and then we discuss why using one. But a SWOT analysis assesses, you can use it to assess a small situation or a big situation, and make the best decision either way. It's kind of like, and it's just making a decision. Sometimes people do a SWOT analysis simply just to make a decision. They don't know what to do. So, hey, let's sit down and figure this out. Draw your board, write down, pros and cons. The SWOT analysis is really a big, detailed pro and con, list. And then you make once you have all the information you need in front of you and all the facts in front of you, it enables you to make the best decision from the ones that are available. And then SWOT keeps things moving forward, which results in longevity. When you are honest about yourself personally and professionally, and sometimes you can even use a SWOT analysis as yourself professionally. You know, just like you would personally as just a regular person doing whatever, you can also take it as a professional working in a company, trying to figure out what you can do. You know, a SWOT analysis can be used for many things. I just used it from these two standpoints. But the whole point is longevity. You know, like they say, fast things leave fast. You know, quick money goes fast. You know, fast life ends fast. You know, the point is longevity. You can sit back and watch people, you know, achieve all these accomplishments and all of these things. And sometimes you know that they've been doing things for years and nobody ever knew about them. You know, we say what we want to say about Jeff Bezos, but Jeff Bezos ran Amazon out of his, you know, what was it, a bedroom in his house? You know, Gates ran Microsoft out of his parents' garage. Zuckerberg, you know, ran Facebook out of his college dorm room. You know, we don't know how long these people have been doing these things. We just now see that they're making all of this money, and that's a whole other conversation within itself. But a lot of times, I mean, even Tesla dude, Elon Musk, we have no clue how long he's been developing the things he's been doing, which I think they announced today he has surpassed Bezos as the richest man on the planet. So, but we don't know. So the whole point of SWOT analysis helps with longevity. You're in it for the long haul. You know, this is the long game. We're not trying to make a bunch of money and retire real quick. You want to be relevant for a long time. You know, that keeps resources coming in by, you know, a lot of ways, by way of money, but even, you know, just having good quality personnel, keeping yourself up to date. You know, a lot of times you become a company that's in the industry to becoming an industry leading company. You know, your Microsofts, your Amazons, your, you know, Ebony magazines, your BET. Well, now let's take BET back. You know, but Tyler Perry's, you know, you become just one person in the industry to now becoming what the standard is for the industry. That's kind of where I'm going with this. So the SWOT analysis helps you stay ahead of the competition, you know, and then it helps forecast any potential pitfalls, and you have a plan to combat them. You know, when you start looking at what your threats and your weaknesses are, those are your pitfalls. You know, so you start to create, you know, have plans in place that if this happens, have a plan A through Z, at least a plan A through C, you know, at least 3, you know, backup plans. But when you start being realistic and honest with yourself, you want to celebrate your successes. Those are your strengths. Those are your opportunities. But you really want to look at your weaknesses and your threats, because that's where your problems are going to come from. And so when you start to realize and can be able to forecast where potential pitfalls may come from, you have plans in place that when you start seeing these things happen, hey, let's implement blah, blah, blah. You know, so it helps you with that. And then it serves as a reminder as to where good things are occurring and where change needs to occur. You always want to celebrate your successes and your opportunities. Those are the good ends. You know, those are the good things, but you need to know where your change needs to come in, because the change is without changing, without innovating, without paying attention to those threats and things like that. That's where the problems occur. And you're trying to lessen the number of problems that you have, that you're going to, you know, you're going to have problems anyway. You don't want to, you know, compile problems into bigger problems. And then innovation and creativity. You always want to stay current. You always, from being just another company to being the standard of what people expect. So innovating and taking advantage of, you know, new protocols that come in, you know, new marketing trends, you know, all that type of stuff. Pay attention to what's going on and use that to your advantage, you know, stuff that applies to you. You know, sometimes you just have to try things and see if they work, and if they don't, you let them go, but at least you tried. But when you find something that does work, you continue to use that and make it work for you. And then to always keep personal and professional goals on the list. Remember, everything is about purpose, is about achieving a goal. When you have a goal, that street, you know, you're just not driving all willy-nilly. You know, that street is there for you. Your goal is, you accomplish one goal, you can add another one to the list. And that all of this is to determine a true purpose. So for some people, like I said, they learn their purposes early on in life, and that's fine. You know, for others, they don't, and that's fine as well, just as long as you learn it. And money can only be a reason. It should never be a sole purpose as to why you do anything, because when money becomes your driving purpose, there's never enough money in print. You know, and it's not money that's the root to evil, it's the love of money that's the root to evil. So we can't, unfortunately, we live in a society where we can't really function without it. That's fine. You know, having money is fine, but money cannot be the sole reason you do anything. And that's why a lot of these companies, you know, Remember back when COVID first hit and people were told to stay home, and all of a sudden we started getting the Black-owned restaurants, you know, and all of this, and it was like almost every week there was 20 or 30, you know, home delivery restaurants opening up. Half of them don't even exist anymore. You know, and it's for various reasons: bad customer service, lack of funding, you know, not having a sound business plan. It's you know, it's all different reasons. But a lot of those companies that just opened up on a whim, trying to provide a service, for whatever reason, they're no longer around now. You know, if you try to go to some, you know, go to the, you know, Black-owned restaurant Facebook page, a lot of those businesses are not in existence anymore. And it's not even Black-owned restaurants. It's just a lot of different, you know, people tried to start offering different types of services because of COVID, you know, and people couldn't leave home, and, you know, they were just trying to fill a niche. You know, they found in something, you know, not exploit, but they found something they could take advantage of positively. Let's put it that way. It was an opportunity, but there were things that they didn't anticipate. And I mean, if we want to look at it from a SWOT analysis, they didn't pay attention to their weaknesses. They didn't pay attention to their threats. They didn't take advantage of the opportunities as they continued to present themselves. And their weaknesses became more than their strengths. Their threats became more than their opportunities. And unfortunately, that led to them going out of business. You know, and it happens. You know, like they say, most businesses don't survive in the first 3 years anyway. So, you know, if you're just going into business and you think you're going to make all this money up front, you know, like they say with purpose, purpose is the reason when motivation eludes you. When the motivation is gone, if you don't understand, and if that is not part of your true purpose for what you're doing, that whole idea of what you're doing is going to be gone as well. So you have to have a purpose for what you're doing, and money can't be it. You know, and that's why SWOT analysis is really good to help you as a person, and to help you, you know, if you own a company or business wise, or even just as a professional trying to, you know, climb the professional ladder. You know, you have to know where your strengths, your weaknesses, and your opportunities and threats are, and make sure you have, you know, an understanding of those things. And so, as always, these are my, does anybody have any questions on anything? Type them in. I'm gonna go through and get going. Next Thursday, I am doing You Are Your Own Brand 24/7, 365. That's next Thursday, January 14th at 7 p.m. And I started looking at this background. I don't know if I actually like this slide. So the slide may look different. I may keep it and it may look different, but this is what my topic is for next Thursday. You Are Your Own Brand 24/7, 365. And then, as always, here's my contact information. Me, 800 educator Bridget at TICommunities.com and Facebook.com/Bridget M. King. Yes, I hear somebody.
Every time she does that, it messes with my mind.
Huh? Sheila. Oh, I was about to say, we can hear you. Okay, so let me go back to, let me stop sharing. Nobody go anywhere, so I can take my picture of everybody, because I always forget to do so. Thank you, ladies, for coming this week. I've been off for the last, 2 weeks, I think it was, or a week and a half or whatever. It just feels like I haven't worked in forever. So this was my first night back, and I appreciate you ladies for coming. What is it, 7:43? This actually went about the time I said it would. I thought it would end about 7:30, 7:35. But I want to thank you ladies for coming. Oh, hold on, survey. I want to make sure we get those in. Uh-oh, where did y'all go? There we go. That's this week's survey. The name of this week's presentation was Personal and Professional SWOT Analyses. SWOT. There we go. And so I'll give y'all a couple of minutes to get that going. But I want to thank you all for coming. And stay warm. It's supposed to get cold. They are forecasting snow this weekend, sleet and snow in the Metroplex. That's supposed to be what they call the aggressive forecast. I don't know what they're relying on now. Last time it was the rain coming from California and the cold front coming from the Arctic or wherever it was, Canada or wherever it's coming from. I'm not sure what they're looking at this time, but worst case scenario, Saturday and Sunday, we have sleet and snow. You know, so stay warm, stay safe. You know, COVID is getting, we now have our British COVID in the country now. I mean, in the state now. Somebody in Houston has been diagnosed with it. So stay safe, stay warm. Love you all. See you next Thursday. Bye-bye.